Hi everyone, welcome to Basketball Victoria's online sporting schools program. We're into the second week, or we're into session 2. We're going to be focusing a little bit on our passing, working with our teammates, and a little bit on the defensive side of the basketball as well. I've got Lockie here helping me today. My name's Jared, we're both from Frankston Basketball. Before we start the session today though, as always, we're going to do a warm-up. So our warm-up today, the first exercise we're going to do is just your standard high knee running, up and back. Now go back. We need the extra warm-up today. High knee skips is the second exercise, so high knee skips. And we'll go back. Then we've got a lateral hop, or like a lateral slide exercise. So we're just going to skip across from one side of the key to the other. You can make this sideline to sideline if you like, to extend the warm-up out a little bit. We're going to do some zigzags. So we're going to just changing direction, focusing on changing direction. Careful with this one. And we'll go back. Nice one. We've got our pitter-patter stops, so we're going to just kind of sprint out a couple of steps, come to a pitter-patter, take off and go again. So it's just acceleration, deceleration. So we take off, pitter-patter and go again. Away we go. And then we're going to come to the front here and finish off with 10 squats. So just body weight squats, sitting down on our imaginary chair, get nice and warm. Okay, so the first drill today is our partner or wall stationary passing. So we're just going to be working on the fundamentals of the act of passing the basketball. Obviously in basketball we use the pass to move down the court, to involve our teammates, to get better positions for shooting and scoring. It's one of the most underrated parts of basketball, but if we're starting with beginners today, it can be a little bit boring to start off with, so we've got some ways we can jazz it up for you a little bit and make it a little bit more fun, and then we'll move into a bit of a game as well. So what I'm going to get Lockie to do here, we're going to start on the wall. We're going to give you two options here. So obviously if you've got a big group, a big class of even numbers, we can do that partner passing. If you've got a big wall and you'd prefer to have every kid has a basketball practicing passing against the wall, here's our option for that. We're just going to start with a chest pass. I've got my cone here, but Lockie can use the baseline as a bit of a guide. You guys might use cones or dots, or you might actually have the space on the court to be able to just set a line back or pick a line that's a little bit further back from the wall. Basically what we're going to do is just our chest pass. Lockie's a right-hander, so as he does the pass, he's going to step forward with his right foot and throw the pass. The technique for this is pretty simple. We want the ball to start at the chest, and we really want the ball to land somewhere, if you're doing it with partner, somewhere between their sort of chest and their hips. As Lockie's stepping forward, what we're trying to teach is his thumbs are on the ball in a thumbs up position. So as you can see here from the side, he's got the thumbs up, and as he finishes that pass, it's thumbs down. So it's just a really simple, as the kids are holding the ball in their hand, get them to focus and show you that they've got the ball in their hands thumbs up. They follow through, and it's thumbs down as they finish. So that's really the main technique, as well as stepping forward with their right foot, pushing from their chest, using as much power as they possibly can. Some things you can add to this if you want to add a little bit extra to this. Depending on what sort of wall you have or you're using, you might have a target. Okay, so you might have something already painted on the wall that the kids can use. It might be a brick. You can challenge them to hit a brick so many times in a row. We've got a hula hoop here because our walls are just painted nice and plain. I'm going to use the hula hoop as a bit of a target for Lockie to challenge him. Don't hit my hand. Perfect. So a bit of a challenge for Lockie, working on his passing. Excellent. Well done. Oh, bad luck. If that's getting a bit too easy, the chest pass is a bit too easy, we can go to a bounce pass. Okay, so really the technique of the actual passing is the same. We really just want to make sure we're bouncing the ball about halfway between our partner or the wall so that it bounces up again and it's still landing somewhere in this sort of area here. So Lockie's just going to complete a bounce pass. Perfect, and it's just going to bounce back. Again, he's stepping forward with his dominant side, so right foot forward, completing that bounce pass at the wall, and it's coming back. Again, for a bit more of a challenge, we can add the hula hoop in. Ooh, and he's got to try and hit in the middle of that hula hoop. Perfect thumbs up, thumbs down technique, stepping forward into his pass. Okay, now we're going to do our partner passing. So again, we're working on the fundamentals of passing. Now we're doing it so that if you've got you don't have enough basketballs to maybe work with one basketball per person, or you're allowed to do some partner passing now, restrictions of ease. We're going to set up so that we're about 2 to 3 meters apart, but it'll depend on the age group of the kids. So if you've got the littler kids, you'll need to move those cones in. With the bigger kids, you should be able to go about the distance at the free throw line. So the key way there. So Lockie and I are going to get together again, and we're just going to do our chest pass. So the big thing to focus on again, we're starting on our line, using our line as a reference. Lockie's going to use his right foot, his dominant side. He's going to step forward with his right foot, again holding the basketball, thumbs up. As he completes that pass, thumbs down, pushing from his chest straight out to me. Bang. Awesome. Big thing to focus on as you're doing this drill, sometimes especially with the preps, the 1s and the 2s, the ball can be a little bit hard for their hands and they may not be able to make the distance. That's probably okay. We don't want to necessarily start to teach them a bounce pass too early, but if the ball hits the ground before it gets to their partner, it's not going to be such a bad thing because it's going to be easier for them to catch. So if they're passing it and it only goes out so far, that's not too bad. Obviously we want to challenge them and get them passing the full distance eventually and catching it, but for beginners we may even need to move the cones in slightly, and we're just sort of making it a nice soft pass depending on the size of the kids, size of the basketball, and how cold it is outside. The next pass we'll do is a bounce pass. So again, you can see here we've clearly got a distance between Lockie and I. We want to land the ball a bit over halfway. Okay, a lot of kids you'll see when you coach a bounce pass, they think ball into court. That's all they're worried about. We really want to still execute the same movement, the same technique, stepping forward with our dominant side, still thumbs up, thumbs down, and we're pushing the ball. That's not a good one. We want to try and make sure that it bounces up to about hip height or about the stomach. It's a bit better. Okay, what you'll see here too is if you've got pairs and they're lined up along the sideline and a couple of meters back, you'll see that generally kids will start to go over the head and they'll do these ones. So we really want to emphasize that we're just getting one bounce, or trying to get one bounce between our partner and I, so that it's just bouncing straight up. Teaching that the aim of the drill is really that we're able to just go straight into our shot or into a dribble, and the use of the bounce pass is to go under the defender's arms. So we really don't want to be going overhead and just throwing the ball straight into the court. So a good challenge for that drill, whether it's against the wall or if it's in pairs, and you've got a set of, like you've got a group of pairs or the individuals, is you can challenge them to try and get as many passes as they can for time. It might be that they have to complete a perfect pass so that the pass reaches their partner on the full or in one bounce. But I think a good one is to maybe put a minute on the clock and challenge each pair to get as many complete passes as they possibly can in a minute. That'd be a really good way to challenge both beginner and sort of that more intermediate or advanced child as well. Okay, so now we're going to move on to our dribble and pass at a target game. Again, you can have this as a competition between 2 or 3 teams set out across the court. Right now, we've just got Lockie and I set up here. The big thing now is we're building on session 1 with what we worked on with our ball handling, and we're now combining that with our passing. So we're starting to build in some of those concepts and those team concepts that we want to sort of focus on. So this game is essentially Lockie's going to start on the cone here. As you can see, we've got some bigger cones laid out about 5 meters ahead. Really all Lockie's going to do is take 1 or 2 dribbles from this cone, and then he's going to use a chest pass and try and hit that cone there. then he's going to chase his basketball and return back to the start. Okay, so if we're in a big group of kids, this might be dribble, hit the cone, get your ball, and then pass to your partner, or everyone might have their own basketball, in which case he would just dribble to the end of the line. It might be first team to hit the cone 5 times or something like that if you've got 3 teams going. So we'll just demonstrate now, Lockie. Away you go. Perfect. Awesome. Okay, so now we're going to do our dribble and pass to a target drill, but we're using the wall now. So if you've got a wall at the end of your court or at the side of your court, and you can have everyone doing this game at the same time, this can be a really good way to get everyone kind of up and active, and not having to sort of just use a cone on the ground or anything like that. It's a little bit easier because the ball will come straight back to the kids. So all you'll need now is the same thing. We need a cone to set up. Lockie's going to start on a cone. I'm going to hold his target, but you might have targets already automatically on your wall, and basically we're going to set the kids up. Same thing again, we can have teams of 5 or 6 kids, however many you can fit on the court, and we're competing against each other to see how many targets we can hit, or we're playing first to 5 or 10 targets hit. So I'm going to be Lockie's target here. Same thing, he's just going to take a dribble and go straight into that pass. Perfect. Then he'd run back to the end of the line, or he'd go again if he's doing it individually. Excellent. The other thing you could do too, if you wanted to add a bit of a challenge to this drill, is actually make it a bounce pass. So Lockie's going to dribble in and a bounce pass. Bang. Again, we're combining that dribbling from week 1. So we're adding the dribble in. Lockie's got to keep his eyes forward, locked in on his target. We could even challenge the footwork a little bit. So Lockie might come to a 2-foot stop before making a pass. Or like he's previously been doing, he's been coming to a stride stop straight into his pass. Still using good technique, thumbs up, thumbs down on the basketball as always. That's perfect. Okay, now we're going to move on to some defensive drills. Defense is a really, really important part of the game. It can be really difficult to coach though. It's not the funnest, the most fun thing for kids to do, but we need to make sure that it's exciting, and we're going to get into some games that are going to challenge the kids in that way. Before we get into our first drill, which is a close out, slide and back pedal drill, we're going to just teach really quickly the defensive stance and how to set up a defensive stance properly. So again, I'm going to use my Aussie Hoops markers. Lockie's coming in, focusing from the ground up again. We want to have a nice balanced setup. So again, we want a little wider than shoulder distance apart. You can use your feet as a T, or you can just sort of step nice and wide here. Ask the kids to step nice and wide. Then we want to get into our imaginary chair again. So we're sitting on our imaginary chair and we're arms nice and wide. So arms wide, you can have one arm high, one arm low, but arms wide is the easiest way to teach it. So if you ask the kids, just sit on an imaginary chair, feet apart, arms wide, there's our defensive stance. The next thing we're going to need to know is how to move in our defensive stance. So this is a tough one, or it can be difficult to teach because a lot of the time kids' feet will want to come together or they'll want to overlap. The way we teach this is right now, the distance between Lockie's 2 feet is a big distance. For him to start sliding, we want his feet to go to bigger. So he goes from big to bigger, back to big. So we go big to bigger, back to big, and as he moves along, he's sliding along. For those kids that are just starting out, that's plenty for them. If we get through that in this session, we'd be really happy with that. For those kids that have played basketball before, we'd be trying to look at the finer points of making sure they're staying down in that defensive stance. They're not bobbing up and down. Okay, so one way you can teach that is that you can imagine that you can tell them to imagine they've got a bowl of water on their head or something like that, and they've got to stay nice and stable, or it might be a book on their head and they can't move up and down because otherwise it'll fall off. We want to also make sure they're focusing on not moving too much up and down with their jumping off the ground. Okay, so we're focusing a little bit more on as they push out to that whichever direction they're going, that this back foot slides along the ground. It's not hopping and lifting off the ground either. Okay, so now we're going to do our closeout, slide and back pedal drill. We're starting to combine a lot of things together here. We obviously just worked on our defensive stance really quickly. This is just a chance to get the kids warmed up, a bit of huff and puff, for a bit of fitness and to get them moving. So we would start a line basically down here on the edge of the key, or where the key meets the baseline there where Lockie's standing. But if you didn't have court markings, or you just were doing this on an oval, you could easily just mark out a couple of meters here with each cone, just make a bit of a rectangle to mimic the keyway. So what we're going to do here, the first part of this drill, is Lockie's going to basically sprint out at this first cone and do what we call a closeout. So Lockie's going to take off, and as he gets to about a meter away, he's going to pitter-patter, okay, which means he's really quickly shortening his steps, okay, so he's shortening his steps right down into that pitter-patter and then throwing his arms up. That helps him stop his momentum from continuing forward. And as you can see then, now he's straight down into a defensive stance. Again, the first part of that, the pitter-patter and then the closeout with beginners, is not all that important. It's really just important that they're as quickly as they possibly can reaching this first cone, and then they're down ready to slide. So now Lockie's going to go into a defensive slide from one elbow to the other. Perfect defensive slide. Again, we're focusing on that big to bigger movement. His arms are wide, he's sitting on his imaginary chair, and he's got his, and we're ready to go from big stance to bigger, big to bigger, and he's sliding along. Now the last bit is he's going to back pedal. So now he's going to basically jog backwards, again being careful there's nothing behind him that he's going to trip on, and we finish the drill there. So he would then join the end of the line, or run to the cone and go again. So as I said, basically this first part, this closeout, for your more advanced kids that are maybe playing domestic already, you can focus on the finer points of this. Even as the coach or the teacher, you might stand here and pretend to be someone about to shoot the basketball. So Lockie would be closing out on me because he's got to close that distance really quickly, but he needs to pitter-patter in order to make sure that he's not losing balance. So if Lockie closes out on me and I'm that person shooting the basketball, he's defended my shot, but now he's ready to dribble. Okay, he's ready to defend the dribble, which is the point of the closeout. Okay, so now we're going to get into a reactive drill. So we're going to test not only the kids' defensive stance and their technique and their sliding, but we're going to challenge their reaction time. It's going to be a really fun drill. So as you can see here, I've laid out 5 cones. We've just used the keyway as a bit of a guide, but if you're working with older kids, feel free to have the cone outside the 3-point line if you've got the space and you want to make them work a little bit harder. So basically Lockie's going to start right on the baseline or with his head under the rim. We're going to use each of these markers as basically as a target. So he's going to be down in a defensive stance, pitter-pattering, so quick feet. I'm going to point to a cone. Essentially, he just has to, as quickly as he possibly can, close the space between him and the cone, sprint out, touch the cone, and back pedal. And then we'll throw a couple more challenges in there for some of the more advanced kids. Ready to go? So down in the stance, pitter-patter, bang. Touch the cone, back pedal, back down into a stance. Perfect. Awesome. Pitter-patter. Good. Excellent. Perfect. Okay, so again, you could have, if you've got a group of 20 kids, you could have one kid go, jog back to the end of the line, next kid goes, however you want to do that, or you could have one kid doing 3 or 4 goes at it and moving on to the next person. It's up to you entirely. If you want to sort of throw a little bit more technique into this drill, we can again do the closeout. So we're talking about if Lockie was closing out and actually having to defend someone straight away, making it a little bit more basketball specific. So he would then add the pitter-patter rather than lunging down to touch the cone. He would pitter-patter, throw his arms up as if he was defending a shot, and then back pedal. So we'll just do a couple of those quickly. Go straight out. So pitter-patter, and then he's going to back pedal. Perfect. Pitter-patter, down in a stance. Over here again. Good. Awesome. Awesome. Yeah. And then the last challenge, again, if you've got some more advanced kids, we can again have the closeout, and then we can actually ask them to drop step. So they're going from a defensive stance, they're opening up their stance as if their opponent is attacked off the dribble, and they're sliding 3 slides, 3 slides, and then they would return to the starting position. So we'll just go through that now again. Perfect. Yep. Go again. One more. Bang. Good. Slide. Slide, perfect. Excellent. And again, the challenges with this are obviously we're challenging their reaction time already. It's a bit of fun. If you wanted to have it and you could set it up so that you had the keyway going at both ends, or you might even be able to set up two little courts in the half court space and have two teams kind of competing against each other, challenging each other. There's a lot of fun in this one already with them just challenging their reaction time and testing out their defensive technique there that we've worked on in the previous drill.